There are women who walk into a room full of people and still feel like no one truly sees them. And you know what? They're not lonely because they're alone. They're lonely because they are surrounded by noise that doesn't understand their silence. Today, let's talk about a woman with no friend. She is not bitter. She is not cold-hearted. She has just tasted the flavors of fake smiles too many times. We often think that a woman with no friends must be arrogant or rude. But what if she's just wise? What if she's learned that not every person clapping for you wants to see you win? What if she's discovered that silence is a safer companion than betrayal? You see, we live in a world where connections are plenty, but authenticity is rare. Likes, comments, birthday wishes. They don't replace that one real conversation where someone genuinely asks, "How are you really?" Let me tell you a short story. Once in a village there was a well. Everyone came there to fetch water. But one woman always came alone. People whispered about her, called her strange. One day, a curious little girl asked her, "Auntie, why do you always come alone?" The woman smiled and said, "Because peace draws were better when it's not disturbed." You see, some women choose solitude not because they are antisocial, but because they are protecting the peace they fought so hard to earn. We often misunderstand quiet women. But sometimes the woman who speaks the least has the deepest heart, the sharpest wisdom, and the purest intentions. There is something sacred about a woman who has learned to enjoy her own company. She doesn't need gossip to feel included. She doesn't need drama to feel alive. She doesn't chase people, and most importantly, she no longer begs for presence in places where her soul is not seen. She has cried alone, eaten alone, laughed alone, and healed alone. She has learned that the loudest cheers often come from within. And when you ask her, "Don't you get lonely?" she simply smiles and says, "Sometimes, but never enough. Let the wrong people back into my life." Solitude is not sadness. That's something we often misunderstand, especially when we see a woman who chooses to walk alone. We assume that if someone isn't surrounded by friends, if she isn't constantly socializing, laughing, or posting selfies with her squad, then something must be wrong. Maybe she's depressed. Maybe she's been left out. Maybe she's bitter. But what if she's just wise? What if she's come to understand something most people haven't yet realized? That being alone can actually be a form of deep healing. There's a big difference between being alone and being lonely. Loneliness is the absence of connection. Solitude, on the other hand, is the presence of oneself. Think about it. How many people are surrounded by others, yet feel completely empty inside? They sit at crowded tables, attend every gathering, get countless birthday wishes on social media, and yet when the night falls and the noise fades, they're still looking for someone to truly see them. Now imagine a woman who chooses silence over noise. She goes for a walk in the park alone. She takes herself out for coffee, sits near the window with a book, and feels complete. Not because she doesn't enjoy the company of others, but because she enjoys her own presence even more. That's not sadness, that's strength. Let's take a simple example from daily life. There's a woman named Arisha. She used to be the center of every social circle. Always on the phone, always planning outings, always surrounded by people. But slowly she began to feel drained. Conversations felt shallow. Friends started competing rather than supporting. She would share her struggles, only to be met with indifference or worse, gossip behind her back. She began to realize that she was giving so much of herself away just to keep these connections alive. One day, she paused. She didn't respond to every message. She stopped saying yes to every plan. At first, it felt strange. Her phone was silent. Her weekends were free. But soon, something beautiful happened. She began to reconnect with herself. She started journaling, meditating, even revisiting old hobbies. She'd sit on her balcony with a cup of tea and feel content. No pressure to perform, no need to please, just peace. She wasn't lonely. She was liberated. People started noticing her absence. Some assumed she was going through something tragic. Others whispered that she had become arrogant. But what they didn't realize was that Aisha hadn't disappeared. She had simply retreated into her own light. A place most people are too afraid to enter because it forces them to face their own reflection. Solitude gives a woman time to listen to her thoughts, not the world's opinions. It allows her to feel her emotions without distraction, to process her past, and to dream boldly about her future. It teaches her that she doesn't need someone to complete her, because she was never incomplete. Society has trained women to be nurturers, caretakers, friends, therapists, and more, always giving, always available, but rarely taught to give that same care to themselves. You know what's truly sad? Not a woman who sits alone with peace, but a woman who's surrounded by people and still feels invisible. That's the real tragedy. That's the kind of loneliness that breaks a spirit slowly, without anyone noticing. But a woman who embraces solitude learns a different kind of language. She learns to dance to her own rhythm, to walk to her own beat. She laughs louder, cries deeper, and lives freer. She becomes more selective about who enters her life. Not out of pride, but out of protection. Because once you've found inner peace, you realize how precious it is. And you don't hand it over to just anyone. The world will always question a woman who walks alone. But if she's walking in truth, walking in strength, walking in alignment with her soul, then let them wonder, let them whisper, let them guess. She owes no one an explanation, because her silence speaks more powerfully than 1,000 empty conversations. Solitude is not sadness, it is sacred. It is where a woman rediscovers her worth, where she stops looking for love in the wrong places and starts loving herself, where she realizes that being alone isn't about lack, it's about presence, presence of mind, presence of spirit, presence of self. So if you're that woman sitting quietly in a world that's always shouting, know this: you're not behind, you're not broken, you're not weird, you're just ahead of your time. Because while others chase attention, you're building a sanctuary within. And that, my friend, is not sadness, it's strength in its purest, most beautiful form. Not all friends are friends. That's a lesson many learn the hard way, through the ache of betrayal, the sting of silence when they needed someone the most, and the confusion of being surrounded by people yet feeling utterly alone. There's a painful beauty in discovering that some of the people you once laughed with, cried with, even trusted with your deepest secrets were never truly your friends. They were simply present, not loyal. They were companions for the moment, not keepers of your soul. It's one of life's most humbling experiences to realize that closeness doesn't always equal connection. Just because someone always around doesn't mean they are truly there for you. Some people stay near out of convenience, curiosity, or comparison, not care. They show up when the skies are blue but vanish when your world turns gray. And that's when it hits hardest. When you're in your lowest season and you look around only to find the people who claim to be your ride or die were never even buckled in. Let's take a simple but powerful everyday example. Imagine a woman named Zoya. She's the kind of woman who's always been there for everyone. Birthdays, breakups, bad days. She's the one people call. Her phone never stops buzzing. She's the listener, the problem solver, the one who drops everything just to be by a friend's side. People call her strong, loyal, and selfless. But what happens when the strong one falls? One day, Zoya hit a rough patch in her life. Her business began to fail. She was emotionally drained, mentally exhausted, and spiritually lost. For the first time in years, she needed someone to be there for her. So she reached out, sent a few messages, made a few calls, but suddenly the replies came late or didn't come at all. Excuses like, "I'm so busy these days," or "I hope you feel better soon," replaced the long, heartful conversations she once gave to others. She sat on her bed one evening, phone in hand, realizing something that shook her spirit. She had friends to laugh with, but not to lean on. Friends for good times, not hard times. That moment of truth was like a quiet earthquake in her heart. No drama, no noise, just a shift. A shift in how she saw people, and more importantly, how she saw herself. Sometimes, people are in your life not because they love you, but because they love what you do for them. And when you stop pouring into them, they stop showing up. It hurts deeply. But it also opens your eyes to a higher level of awareness. That's when true growth begins. That's when a woman begins to clean her emotional circle. She starts listening not just to people's words, but to their energy. She observes who checks in without a reason, who celebrates her success without envy, who sits in silence with her without needing her to entertain, who stays even when she has nothing to offer. A woman who realizes that not all friends are friends becomes more careful, more intentional. She no longer clings to people out of history or habit. She understands that time shared doesn't always equal trust earned. Just because you've known someone for 10 years doesn't mean they deserve access to your heart for 10 more. Longevity doesn't always mean loyalty. This doesn't make her bitter. It makes her better. She no longer fears letting people go because she's learned that real friendship doesn't feel like weight. It feels like light. It doesn't drain you. It nourishes you. It doesn't make you question your worth. It reminds you of it. We've been taught to collect people like trophies, as if the number of friends determines our value. But the truth is, a single, genuine connection is far more valuable than 100 shallow ones. One friend who shows up in the storm is worth more than dozens who are only there for the sunshine. There's a powerful freedom in walking away from relationships that only survive when you're useful. It allows space for real friendships to grow. Friendships that are rooted in depth, not drama, truth, not titles, soul, not status. So if you're a woman who has discovered that not all your friends were truly friends, let that be your awakening, not your wound. Let it be the reason you stop chasing people and start cherishing peace. Let it be the moment you stop proving your worth and start protecting it. You are not hard to love. You are not too much. You were just giving your heart to people who couldn't hold it with care. Now you know better. And when a woman knows better, she chooses better. She doesn't settle for almost friendships or half-hearted loyalty. She waits. And when the right people arrive, those who love her in fullness, in silence, in struggle, she welcomes them with open arms, but guarded gates. Because now she knows not all friends are friends. And that's okay. Because losing fake ones is not a loss. It's a step closer to the real thing. She becomes her own best friend. That's not loneliness, that's evolution. It's the moment when a woman stops expecting others to rescue her emotionally and begins to realize she has all the strength she needs already within her. It's not that she never loved being around people or didn't enjoy friendships. She did. But she finally reached a point where she understood something powerful. Depending on others for constant emotional support, happiness, and approval is like building your home on a shaky foundation. One storm and everything crumbles. Imagine this in daily life. There's a woman named Sana. For years, she tried to be everything for everyone. She kept her calendar full, made time for every birthday, every crisis, every casual hangout. Her energy was always pointed outward, making sure everyone around her felt seen, heard, and loved. But in the process, she ignored the most important relationship of all, the one with herself. She didn't notice how tired she was, how she had become a stranger to her own reflection, how her laughter sounded more polite than real. And then one day, everything went quiet. She faced a phase in life that felt like emotional winter. The texts stopped coming. Friends were too busy. Her heart was heavy, but no one asked how she was really doing. At first, she panicked. She wondered if she had done something wrong. She tried to reach out, to reconnect. But something inside her had changed. The silence that once scared her started to feel comforting. The solitude that once felt like punishment started to feel like peace. She began to sit with herself. No distractions, no noise, just her, her thoughts, and that little voice inside her heart that she had silenced for years. She started writing again. Something she loved as a child. She picked up her old sketchbook, and without realizing it, tears rolled down her face, not from sadness but from reunion. She was meeting herself again. Slowly, she started doing things alone. She went for morning walks, not to burn calories, but to breathe. She took herself out for coffee, but not to look busy, but to enjoy her own company. She stopped needing someone to validate her plans, her looks, her choices. For the first time, she wasn't dressing up to impress, speaking to be liked, or acting to fit in. She was just her, and it felt powerful. People noticed the change. Some were confused. Some said she was acting distant. Some said she was becoming different. But she didn't explain. She didn't need to. Because once a woman becomes her own best friend, the need to explain her peace to others disappears. She no longer needs to be understood by everyone. She just needs to be at peace with herself. It's in those moments of self-friendship that a woman realizes she doesn't have to beg for attention, chase affection, or fight to be heard. Her value doesn't decrease just because someone else couldn't see it. She stops asking, "Why don't they treat me right?" and starts asking, "Why did I allow less than I deserve?" That shift, quiet but powerful, changes everything. You see, the world teaches women how to nurture others, but it rarely teaches them how to nurture themselves. So when a woman decides to turn inward, to sit with her wounds instead of running from them, to heal herself instead of waiting for someone else to do it, that's not weakness, that's wisdom. And as she grows closer to herself, she starts to notice the difference between those who love her presence and those who love her essence. She sees through superficial friendships and values those rare souls who see her even when she's not trying. She no longer settles for being half loved, half heard, or half seen. Why? Because her own friendship has taught her how complete love feels. This kind of woman becomes magnetic, not because she tries to impress anyone, but because self-respect is attractive. People are drawn to her calm. They wonder why she doesn't react the way she used to, why she walks away from drama, why she values her time like gold. The answer is simple. When you become your own best friend, you protect your peace like a treasure because you know what it took to find it. She doesn't need constant reassurance anymore. Her worth isn't tied to compliments, relationship status, or how many friends show up. She isn't afraid to eat alone at a restaurant, go for a movie by herself, or spend an evening in silence, because her own company is no longer something to escape. It's something to enjoy. And perhaps the most beautiful part, she becomes a better friend to others. When a woman learns to love herself deeply, she no longer gives from a place of emptiness. She gives from overflow. She doesn't need people. She chooses them. And that difference changes the entire quality of her relationships. So when you see a woman walking alone, smiling softly, sipping coffee at her favorite table with a sparkle in her eye, don't assume she's lonely. Maybe, just maybe, she's having the best conversation of her life with the woman in the mirror. Because once a woman becomes her own best friend, she unlocks the kind of peace that no one can give and no one can take away. She values quality over quantity. It's not about how many people surround her, it's about how many actually understand her soul. In a world obsessed with numbers, followers, likes, friends on social media, a wise woman begins to see through the illusion. As she realizes that 100 people clapping for, you can still feel emptier than one person who silently holds your hand when no one else even notices your pain. This shift doesn't come easily. It comes from experience, from heartbreaks, from fake friendships, from those moments when your life falls apart and you see who actually shows up. A woman doesn't wake up one day deciding she doesn't want many friends. She arrives at that decision after years of pouring herself into people who only took from her, of sharing secrets that became stories for gossip, of giving love where it was never truly appreciated. Let's think of a woman named Haina. Haina was popular, outgoing, always the life of every party. Her phone never stopped ringing. She had group chats with different circles. Work friends, school friends, gym friends. It looked like she had it all. But deep down she felt a quiet emptiness. She could make people laugh, but had no one to cry with. She could share jokes, memes, and updates, but not her fears, her wounds, or her dreams. Every time she tried to open up, the conversation would shift. People were either too distracted, too disinterested, or too self-absorbed. Then one day, life tested her. A major loss shook her world. She found herself in one of the most vulnerable moments of her life. In tears, she picked up her phone to call someone, anyone, just to feel less alone. But no one picked up. A few replied with quick texts say, so sorry for your loss. Let me know if you need anything." But no one showed up. No one sat beside her. No one stayed. That night, Haina didn't just lose what she had loved. She lost the illusion of friendship. She realized that being surrounded by people didn't mean being supported by them. That was the night she stopped chasing crowds and started choosing hearts. Over time, her circle shrank. Not because she was cutting people off to be rude, but because she had grown. She didn't want to fill her life with noise anymore. She wanted meaning. She no longer entertained surface level conversations. She wanted real talk, deep connections, raw honesty. And in that quiet space, she found a few. Just a few. But oh, how rich those few were. There's a different kind of joy in sitting with someone who listens without judgment. Someone who doesn't compete with your success or disappear in your sorrow. Someone who doesn't always say the right thing, but stays when the wrong things happen. That's quality. And once a woman tastes that, she can never go back to crowds that feel cold. When a woman starts valuing quality over quantity, she also changes how she shows up. She stops overextending herself just to keep friendships alive. She no longer says yes out of guilt or fear of missing out. She doesn't force conversations or chase validation. She simply offers her presence, fully, genuinely, and only to those who deserve it. And what happens then is magic. Her life becomes lighter. There's less drama, less comparison, less pretending. She stops trying to prove her worth to everyone and starts investing in the few who already see it. Those 2 or 3 people who check on her, not just when it's convenient, but when it matters. The friend who remembers her favorite song. The one who prays for her quietly. The one who doesn't need updates because they know her soul. She stops posting everything online hoping someone will notice. She realizes that the most meaningful moments are the ones shared in silence, in presence, not performance. Her focus shifts from impressing people to inspiring herself. From needing attention to nurturing intention.